Good morning, everybody. I see everybody slowly getting into the room. You're all very welcome to this UNITAR Colombia workshop. I'll just give a couple minutes for everybody to get with their audio connected and ready to go for today. It is really great to be, I'm really excited for this last of the series workshop with Alex and her team. Today we close a super successful virtual fully series of conflict resolution, mediation, negotiation courses. It has been amazing to be part of this. I am so glad that we have all been able to morph and to create interactive, equally participative, and super inclusive workshops. I feel more than ever because we are already seeing the chat where everybody's connecting from. And it's such a pleasure to see so many countries, so many people represented and getting this kind of super important skills, soft skills that are useful for personal and professional life. As a logistical issue, I would recommend everybody to stay muted, please, during the workshop, unless we will have some time for questions or participation. We will also be having a breakout room for this workshop. As a reminder, the title is Amplification Strategies for Diplomatic Leadership. I feel like every word of the title just makes it a little bit more exciting. And I will not take much more time from this introduction. I will just want to thank once again Alex and her team, Young, Oliver, Mie, Yuan, Cameron, and everybody else that has been really working hard to make all this series a huge success. And whenever you're ready, Alex, just a little bit of like mention, Alex is the director of the mediation clinic in Columbia Law School and the author of an incredible book that is called Ask for More, that I have over here. And I would recommend it to anybody who is in the workshop and has been attending our training, because it really has even more information about negotiating in a very special way and for everybody, which is the most important thing. So no more time stolen from me. And Alex, whenever you're ready, we are ready to go with this third and last workshop of amplification strategies for diplomatic leadership.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Pelayo and Amy and Ambassador Marco and everyone from UNITAR, again, for this warm collaboration and the many years of partnership we have behind us. I'm thrilled to see, I just want to call out in the chat that we are seeing people from all over the world. I see a couple of folks here from Boston and New Jersey stateside. And then I'm just going to read out a few places. We have Istanbul, Kenya, London, Kuala Lumpur, Argentina, Haiti, Baghdad, UAE, Czech Republic, Ukraine, Mumbai, India, Botswana, a Swede in Germany. I could go on. We have so many countries here, and it's absolutely incredible to think about all of us gathering from around the globe to discuss such an important topic. This workshop is amplification strategies for diplomatic leadership. What does that mean? It means that today we're going to be talking about the fact that leadership that focuses on others, amplifying others, uplifting others, giving feedback, helping other people to shine is ultimately the best way to increase your own leadership skills as well as your persuasion in negotiation. I'm really excited to have a wonderful team with us today. And please allow me to read their names. So we have Jessica Barragan, Ji-Yoon Chung, Meyer Horn, Young-Jun Ju, Oliver Kwan, Cam Molis, Mie Morikubo, Matthew Robinson, and Erica Zoe. I am so thrilled, as always, to present this team to you They have spent dozens and dozens of hours researching and preparing to present this material to you today. As always, you know from our workshops that we rely on your participation. And so just the way you have been so active in the chat, we're going to ask you to continue that. So our goals today, actually, let me go and pass it over to our team. And why don't you guys talk to us about our goals here for today? And I'll be here with you the entire time. And I'm really thrilled to see what comes out of this workshop. So congratulations, everyone. And let's let the team take over.
Sure. So I think I might have gone back a slide, but we are going to, just like Alex said, we are going to, she conveniently pulled out the buzzwords from our goals for the day. Today, we're going to understand SHINE theory for diplomatic leadership, which is a leadership theory that we will explain in more detail very shortly. It's tied in perfectly with recognizing the importance of self-awareness, and then we'll build off of the foundation of self-awareness to discuss tools and strategies for these amplification and effective feedback tools, for lack of a better word, for diplomatic leadership. Our agenda will be to give a broad overview of this leadership theory that we want to explain and that inspired us to create this framework for diplomatic leadership before diving into the specific tools. And now I will actually pass it off to my colleague Nie to start us off with an icebreaker question.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, June. So yes, like Alex and June have mentioned, we are, I think on the next slide, gonna try to get everyone to keep up the involvement in the chat that we've seen so far. And so the prompt we'd love to hear about from you in the chat is, tell us about the best boss you've ever worked with. What made them so effective? This is kind of a form of leadership that everyone has encountered, and so we'd love to know what has stood out to you as really extraordinary. Kindness and patience. Thank you so much, Javier. Okay, that's a great one. All right. Attentive and available to talk. Didn't micromanage and trusted. Wonderful. Thank you for, oh wow, wonderful. We have a flood of responses now, which is fabulous to see. So I'm going to try to pick out a few because these are all really wonderful. So I've seen positive feedback when I needed improvements, encouragement, challenging me, building confidence and trust. So Maria said, listens to me and respects my views. Thank you. So I think a theme that I'm seeing here, and I'm happy to see here because it sounds like you've had some wonderful bosses, is kind of respect, encouragement, and kind of empowering you to take ownership of what you need, and keeping up good communication about how things are going. And so, yes, I see Jillian, great communication skills and leadership traits. Wonderful. Okay, so I think we've got a really wonderful list of traits here, and thank you all for hopping in so actively, because a lot of what you're discussing in the chat really reflects on kind of a core guiding theory that we've used to organize how we're thinking about leadership, and that's SHINE theory. So SHINE theory was originated by Aminata So and Anne Friedman. And the core idea, which I think a lot of your comments have gotten at, is this idea of, I don't shine if you don't shine. So the great bosses that you're talking about have done things like challenging you to take on a new task, empowering you to take ownership of a new teacher, encouraging you when needed, but also giving you the space to kind of do what you thought would work best, and to kind of take ownership and leadership. And so this guiding theory, SHINE theory, is one we really like because it's others focused. And what we're here today to talk about is how this others focus can be used to make you the strongest leader that you can be. And so SHINE theory was originated very much in kind of a interpersonal context, thinking about developing personal relationships and friendships, and not as explicitly in kind of a leadership or corporate or team context necessarily, but we really like this core idea. And to talk a little bit more about benefits of shine theory, I'm going to pass it to my colleague Meyer.
Good morning, everyone. So some of the many benefits of shine theory are that cooperation can get more done than competition. And I know that sometimes that can be a little bit antithetical to what we've learned, but I think we've all experienced on a team or at work how deciding to work together and get straight to the point can often produce excellent results. And cooperation saves time, it saves energy. Energy that may have been spent on conflict is now spent on building together. Additionally, cooperation can create a network. And this is incredibly important for women, underrepresented minorities, or just anyone who feels like they're not a part of a larger group can create a network by reaching out to other people who will then reach out to them. And it's important to remember that you never know how people can help you. And by using shine theory, you can self-start your own network and model the behavior that you want on your team in terms of collaboration and in terms of generosity. And I think it's important to remember that when you lift one person up, you lift up others, and they then oftentimes will extend a hand and bring you up as well. So I'm going to pass it back to my colleague, Mie.
Thanks so much, Meyer. So I'm glad I had a few moments to read through the chat because it was a flood, but I think ties very well into the toolkit we're going to talk about today, because I think I've seen quite a bit of respect, communication, active listening, feedback. Those are all very much connected to the tools that we'd like to discuss today, which are self-awareness and cultural competence, which we think are kind of key underlying tools and abilities that you can then use to give effective feedback and to amplify people you're working with. And those are two other tools that we think are really useful as a leader to help build your team, build your network, and yeah, build a cooperative environment. And so with that, I'm going to pass it to my colleague Erica to talk about self-awareness.
Great, thank you very much, Mie. So if we can go on to the next slide.
My apologies, I'm having just a little bit of technical difficulties, but it should be working now.
Where is my mask? What did I do with it? I'm sorry.
If I could remind everyone to mute themselves if possible. Okay, it should be good now.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much, Jiyun. So I'm going to kind of delve into this concept of self-awareness and how it's important to our goals for this workshop. First of all, what is self-awareness? It is the ability to see ourselves clearly, or an internal mechanism that allows us to observe what we think, feel, say, or do as if we were a third party observing ourselves. Next slide, please. So why is self-awareness important to diplomatic leadership? So shine theory, as introduced by my colleagues Mie and Meyer, so the ability to let others shine, the ability to highlight the value in others and properly acknowledge their contributions and skills, goes hand in hand with strong diplomatic leadership. Having self-awareness pushes us to achieve both those things. Research shows that those who are most self-aware are more confident, more creative, more inclined to build strong relationships and constantly communicate with their colleagues. More importantly, they are more empathetic and attuned to the people around them, as their ability to see themselves clearly in turn enhances their ability to clearly take the perspectives of others. So we can actually break down self-awareness into two categories. The first is internal self-awareness and the second is external self-awareness. You need to have high levels of both to be truly and strongly self-aware. But being high on one level of awareness does not necessarily correlate to being high on the other. Both concepts are very much a work in progress for any budding leader. Next slide, please. So first, what is internal self-awareness? It is our awareness of our own values, passions, goals, emotional reactions, and our impact on others, and how we see all those personal factors fitting into the environment around us. Those with strong internal self-awareness are usually associated with greater job satisfaction, greater self-discipline, and generally greater happiness. Next slide. And what is external self-awareness? It is our awareness of how other people view us, how we think they perceive our values, passions, goals, and our impact. So research shows that those who understand how others see them tend to be more skilled at viewing others' perspectives and showing true empathy. Leaders, for example, who can accurately perceive how their own employees or colleagues view them tend to have a better relationship with said employees and know how to adjust their behavior and leadership techniques in a way that makes their employees feel valued and feel heard. Next slide, please. So essentially, it is important to work on both types of self-awareness in order to make progress as a stronger leader. This graph that we're showing here is just a simplistic outline that introduces this balance between high internal and external self-awareness and how crucial it is to have both. So someone with high internal self-awareness but low external self-awareness, for example, might be confident in who they are, but be unaware or ignorant of how others perceive them, and might therefore be less open to constructive feedback or any challenge to their views. On the opposite end of the spectrum, someone with high external self-awareness but low internal self-awareness might be extremely attuned to how others perceive them, but be so focused on appearing a certain way to their external environment that their primary goal is just to please. So what we all should be personally working towards is some kind of equilibrium where we recognize our own worth and our own value, but constantly seek the opinions of others and simultaneously highlight the value of others. That synergy is the key to strong diplomatic leadership. Now I'm going to pass these slides off to my colleague, Young.
Hello, everybody. So now that we've seen how self-awareness, both internal and external, is so important to better democratic leadership, let's take a look at a few leadership archetypes that we can better identify what type of leader we are. Next slide, please. So to kind of illustrate the main leadership styles that we may see in everyday life, we'll be borrowing from the wisdom of the North American Lakota Sioux and their leadership wheel. Just to give some background to the wheel, the Sioux believe that we are all each born into one primary direction in the wheel and spend our lives walking the wheel to gain wisdom and understanding of all the other directions. So as we explore the leadership wheel, try to see which one or two may feel most natural to you, and also keep in mind a few points. The first one being all directions can be leadership directions. Every direction brings some kind of leadership, every direction brings some kind of wisdom to the table. Every direction has challenges when overused, and we all have access to all the directions. Next slide, please. Yes, the critical thinker. Critical thinkers are motivated by getting things right. They need to have facts and details so that they get the right answers to the right questions. They'll most likely be practical and efficient in their words and actions without much emotion or concern about feelings. They'll be methodical and rational. Next slide, please. Next, we have the warrior. Warriors are mostly motivated by achievement. They want to do things their way with as much control as possible. They expect people to get to the point and for the point to be communicated in a clear and forthright manner. They don't like ambiguity or roundabout discussions. And for an example, when planning a vacation, whenever we can all go, they will want to know the why about location, the best and farthest, fastest way to get there, what we're doing when we get there, and when we're doing it. Next slide, please. The visionary. Visionaries are motivated by possibilities and what ifs. They can inspire others with options and a positive, abundant attitude. They get bored easily with kind of routine or and very much value out of the box thinking. They love to innovate and discover new ways to do things, but the downside to that is they don't like getting bogged down discussing or focusing on the details. Next slide, please. Finally, we have nurturers. They're motivated by people and their relationships. They want people to be heard and cared for, and at times they can put themselves at risk of, let's say, over-caring, overdoing, or even enabling. They love harmony and tend to avoid conflicts. They value feelings and are looking for mostly win-win situations above all. They enjoy building teams and creating collaborative relationships. Next slide, please. So now that you've seen, next slide, please. Now that you've seen the kinds of leadership archetypes that there are, we'd like to ask everyone to turn inwards and identify what kind of leader you are. Are you a warrior, visionary, critical thinker, or nurturer? And in your experience, which of these types of leaders help you do your best work? If you could just, type it in the chat and we could read some out. I see a lot of visionaries, nurturers. A lot of nurturers actually. We have 1, 2 critical thinkers, nurture visionary mix. We have a few warriors here as well. More visionaries, more of a warrior type. You would work best with a critical thinker. Okay, you respond very well to critical thinkers, more visionaries. Okay, we have a lot of visionaries in our chat here. That's very interesting. Warrior, but I sometimes recognize it gets me in trouble. That's a good one. So yeah, while you continue thinking about what type of leader you most identify with and what type of leader you best work with, I'd like to hand it back off to Ji-yoon for a discussion on cultural intelligence.
Thank you, Young. So yes, I thought these 2 questions were very interesting, especially the first one. I noticed that a number of you mentioned you liked working with bosses who made you feel listened to and respected. And I think a key component of this is cultural intelligence, which is a building block of self-awareness, and then a foundation that you can then use to amplify and give effective feedback. Cultural intelligence is crucial now for nearly any type of leadership, but it's all the more important in a context like the UN, where your leadership depends on this ability to understand and recognize both the commonalities and differences across geographic and ethnic cultural lines. A leader with high intelligence can understand the values that drive specific behaviors and differentiate between cultural and individual specific behavior, to then adjust their behavior to best address the situation. And when you make people feel understood and seen for who they are, as many of you have noted, you build trust and respect. So for example, I am Korean American and I've had work experience in both countries. And I would say Korean work culture is still largely collectivist. We focus on the greater good of the collective group, whereas American work culture is a bit more individualist and largely promotes individual growth. So it may seem then that a group of Koreans and Americans would need completely opposite leadership styles and conflicts might arise between the coworkers, but a culturally intelligent leader would be able to facilitate peace by minimizing the gap between values and identify perhaps that collectivism and individualism could actually be complementary. So this cultural intelligence is developed through these 3 components, and let's dive right in. The first one is cognitive cultural intelligence. And this is your head learning about the beliefs and customs of foreign cultures. Traditionally, this is what cultural intelligence training programs have focused on. But Cognitive cultural intelligence also involves devising learning strategies, because directly asking someone about the meaning of their custom most likely won't be successful, because people often hesitate to explain themselves to a stranger, or they might not be used to the level of self-awareness they need about their own culture. So instead, you have to consciously look for clues and consistencies. A word of caution, however, because we all know theory is often very different from practice. So it's important to keep in mind that just memorizing this information and learning from a book or a training won't prepare a person for every situation that arises or prevent an accidentally embarrassing remark or act. And that's why the other two components of cultural intelligence are equally important. Cognitive cultural intelligence tells others you know about their culture, but physical cultural intelligence shows them you know by mirroring their customs and gestures. Knowing whether to shake hands or bow shows that you respect that person enough to learn about them, and this makes them more trusting and open. And then the final component of cultural intelligence involves the emotions. Adapting to a new culture involves overcoming obstacles and setbacks and can frankly take a long time. Someone who doesn't believe herself capable of understanding people from different cultures may give up after her efforts are met with hostility or awkwardness. But someone with emotional cultural intelligence has the motivation then to re-engage with more effort and keep trying. And ultimately, cultural intelligence increases self-awareness, which is, like I said at the beginning, the foundation for effectively using amplification and effective feedback. So now I will actually pass it on to my colleague Cam to launch us into that first tool of amplification.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ji-yoon. So in this others-focused toolbox that we're kind of assembling throughout this presentation, amplification might be one of the first tools that you don't have much familiarity with, that maybe you haven't heard of before, but we believe that it's a really key strategy and an extremely effective motivator when you as a leader are trying to bring up others around you. So what is amplification? Next slide, please. Amplification means using your voice and your position, maybe your access to a room, to elevate others and their ideas together. So a simple example of amplification is me saying, in an earlier presentation we conducted, my colleague Meyer taught me about the benefits of amplification. So I am saying my colleague's name and I'm giving her credit for the contribution that she made that helped me. So yeah, the core of the technique is say someone's name and give them credit. Next slide, please. So we've talked about this in some of our other presentations. So some of you may have heard this before, but let's take a moment to run through the basics of kind of a case study of amplification for some of the new folks in the room. When Barack Obama first took office back in 2008, 2/3 of his top aides were men. Female staffers were reportedly, concerned and justifiably upset about this and decided to come up with a strategy to force their way into important meetings. When they didn't get their seat at the table, they decided to take action. So they deployed this strategy called amplification, which was when a woman in the room made an important point or suggestion that was either ignored or immediately shut down. Other women at the table repeated the first woman's name and gave her credit for the idea and brought it back to the table. So someone may say, I'd like to go back to what Ji-yoon said previously on XYZ point. Or, I think that Ji-yoon's approach that she explained before could really help us, and here's how we could make it happen. So you're recognizing someone else's contribution in the room, and you're giving them credit for what they did so that others can't take that credit for them, and instead are kind of forced to reckon with this idea that, a likely very experienced and intelligent person offered up, but may have been, discarded or left behind because of cultural biases or, lack of representation in a room. So on the next slide, we talk about why we do this amplification. And the way we think about this is that there are really three audiences when you amplify. There's the person being amplified, So in my most recent example, there's Jiyun. You know, she hears me saying her name, she feels recognized, valued, part of the team, and it gives her a spotlight where there may otherwise, you know, where she may have otherwise been overlooked. The second audience of amplification is a third party, you know, someone else at the table who hears my amplification. They're exposed to Jiyun's valuable perspective that may have been overlooked before, and they also see you, the speaker, as maybe an opportunity and a person who this third party would like to join up with, because clearly you are someone who amplifies others, and you know, you are this this kind of beacon of amplification. So they may be drawn to you as an opportunity for advancing their future. And the third audience of amplification is you, the speaker yourself. When you amplify, you increase your understanding and empathy with your colleagues, you know, by me listening actively to Jiyun and thinking about the contribution that she's making. I'm really getting to know her better, and I'm building, you know, a stronger team for myself in the process. And you also get the added benefit of having those third parties come to you and saying, you know, wow, I would really love to be a part of your team, because you make it clear that you want people's voices heard on your team. So to talk about how we do this, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Matthew.
Thank you, Cam. So now we are getting to a discussion exactly about how do we implement the amplification strategy, whether that's in a peace negotiation, right? Whether that's within the context of an international organization, or whether that's in the context of everyday interactions with peers, right? Within any given organization. So really broadly speaking, there are 3 steps to the amplification strategy. First, the identification of a specific problem that could be addressed with amplification. Second, the conscious decision making that you've made to address this problem. And then third, ensuring that the amplification targets the problem identified. So let's begin with the identification of the specific problem. Next slide, please. So it's important to first understand that underlying amplification as a strategy is the need to first identify the specific problems that exist within your organizational context, right? So every organization is different. In the Obama White House, for instance, it was that women were not effectively included in that context. It could be a racial exclusion. It could be a cultural exclusion. It could be a personality exclusion. So it's very important to identify what factors and what things are going on within the context of whatever organization or process you're a part of, right? So self-awareness is crucial. So we first, to refer you back to this concept of sort of internal self-awareness, we more specifically talk to this issue of recognizing your implicit biases, right? Which is implicit biases, unconsciously held attitudes and stereotypes that can affect our interactions with others and may predict behavior, right? So it's important to understand the things that drive us internally, our own biases, our own prejudices, our own favoritisms, right? That would affect our behavior and our interaction with our peers. Because the quicker we understand that, the quicker we can more clearly see the landscape as it truly is. Then we get to the importance of external self-awareness, right? It's important for you to understand how others are seeing you so that you can understand, again, the true dynamics that exist at whatever table, negotiation, peace process, or organization that you are within the context of. Once you have these 2 things, you can better identify the problem that exists that amplification could be used to address. Next slide. Right, so deciding to address the problem. So really there are 2 ways, once you've decided that you're going to amplify a certain person or a certain group of people, right? There are really 2 ways in which you can address this. There's either the individual or unilateral amplifying action, or there's a collective action. So sometimes amplification starts on the individual level, where you as an individual make a determination that you will amplify X person or X thing, right? But there's also what we saw in the Obama White House, a collective action, going on there, where a group of people come together, discuss the issues they've identified, and then use amplification as a strategy to address those issues. And just like sort of the scientific definition of amplification, which is that it's the raising of volume, it's so as it goes with the collective action part of this, right? Which is that the more people that are amplifying, the higher the volume and the higher the impact. So it's very important to, once you decide to address the problem, you first decide how you're going to approach it in terms of whether you're going to do individual action or collective action. And that brings us to our third. Next slide, please. Yes. Effectively targeting the problem, right? So amplification, we've talked about it broadly as a strategy, but to go off a little bit of what my colleague Cam was saying, there are a few key things when actually engaging in the behavior of amplification. So what's the first? Be specific. One of the reasons why amplification is such a effective strategy is because people want to know that they've earned respect, right? And the more specific we are, the more validation we give to the people who are amplifying and to the people who are listening to the amplification, because they understand the authenticity of the amplification that you're conducting, right? And that leads me straight into be honest, right? Every time that you amplify a person or a colleague, it has to come from an honest place because of the question of authenticity. Be targeted. And remember, as Cam said, to say their name. It's very important. There's a distinction between amplification and regurgitation. Regurgitation is the taking of one's ideas and representing it without giving adequate credit. Amplification is assigning credit to the person who's made the statement at that time. Now I'm going to bounce it back to my colleague Cam.
Thanks, Matthew. So since we have a audience of 223 people today, wow, that's impressive. We wanted to give you all the chance to break out into smaller groups and to practice these skills with one another. And I actually think that this will be a pretty easy lift for all of you, because I'll let you in on a secret that you're already master amplifiers because you already worked on this in the chat earlier. When we asked you to talk about your favorite boss, you were naming these people that helped you, and you explained what they did to contribute that, really had an effect on you. But, amplification is all about the conscious action you're making. So we wanted to break it into these groups so you could really think about naming someone. It doesn't have to be a boss. Amplification often works best when it's someone, who's lower in a hierarchy than you, but who's contributed something that really made a difference to the way you think about something, or who has offered, new skills or ideas to you. So we want you to actually do this with one another and just say someone's name, a friend of yours, a colleague, and explain what they taught you. And this, practice will help us all to get a better sense of how to amplify, but it'll also have the opportunity of teaching us all great lessons about other people in our lives. And then the last thing we want to do is, within these smaller groups, we want you to nominate one person who can come back to this main session when we're finished up after about 10 or so minutes, and can either raise their hand or could write into the chat so that we can share their amplification with the full 220 person presentation today. So we're going to break you out into the breakout groups now, and then let's give this a practice.
Please let me know if you're having any difficulties joining a breakout room or you don't see an invitation popping up. At this point, everyone should have received an invitation to join a breakout room. If you have not or are having trouble joining, please let me know and I will do my best to help.
Hello, Gian. My name's Richard. I'm from the
Hi.
United Kingdom. I just want to
Hi,
ask
so
you a
nice
quick
to meet
question, if
you.
I may. Nice to meet you.
Sure,
Thank you so much for this. I
of
just want to
course.
know if these slides will be sent out after the actual session.
Yes, they will be. UNITAR will be sharing both the slides and a recording of our entire presentation afterwards.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, honestly, I've learned so much already. I'm writing a little volunteering management paper, and the practice that we're using is exactly what I'm looking at now. So thank
Oh,
you
I'm
so
so
much in
glad.
advance.
I'm
Thank
so
you so
glad.
much.
Of course. And again, please let me know if you're having any difficulties joining a breakout room.
Hi, there was no one speaking in my breakout room, so I came back here.
Oh, no worries. And actually, yes, thank you so much for reminding me. For those of you who either people in the breakout room had trouble joining or you're having trouble joining yourself, we can also have our own discussion in this main room as our own breakout room. So I'd love to hear if you'd like to share with me an example of amplifying someone you know and something that they taught you.
Okay, so I think I can start. My former boss, who is Ali, he thought me being a respectful person and valuing others' opinions more than yours while he was leading.
So your previous boss, did I hear you correctly?
Yeah.
Made you feel listened to?
Exactly.
Yes, I definitely agree. I think feeling listened to is one of, and judging from the chat share outs as well from earlier, it's one of the main criterias, and feeling like your boss really understands and hears you and respects you as an employee.
My dad was a British Royal Marine and he was an officer, and he taught me community is a very important thing. I'd like to just read you the quote that he taught me as a child. And he said, "Community is one of the most important things in life. It shapes us, it defines us, and it makes us who we are." And for me, that's taught a lot me about people management, because I want them to feel a part of something, but also for me to be a part of them too.
I actually really love that quote, Rich. I wonder if you could share it with the group when everyone comes back as well, because I absolutely agree with you and your father that community is such an important part of effective leadership, and knowing even that it's important to build that, having the self-awareness.
I mean, do you want me to just invite? I'll just read it out to everyone when they come back in the room, if that's all right.
Yes, that'd be wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Is there anyone else in the breakout room here who would like to share? Breakout room, the main room. In the meantime, I will amplify someone I know, I will actually amplify Alex Carter, our leader here in this, in our clinic. She is a leader who embodies all of these things we've said about amplification and giving effective feedback in a way that makes us feel understood for who we are as individuals and valued for our specific strengths. It's never, general, good job, or you're doing great. It's always very specific. And I think that, and her enthusiasm about getting to know us as individuals is huge in creating this sense of community and in motivating us. We have just about 3 minutes left if anyone would like to unmute themselves in this main room. We have 1 more minute. If anyone has any other questions or points they'd like to raise, also happy to hear them. For those of you joining us now, breakout rooms are closing and we're just waiting for everyone to join the main room again.
Welcome back, everyone. I see our numbers are ticking back up through the 170s, the 180s, probably climbing back up to that over 200 number, which is really great. We appreciate everyone who came out today, and this turnout is really inspiring to us, especially as as we're offering some of these ideas like amplification that we think are extremely important, that may not be talked about enough, and that hopefully you can all take away from today and bring forward in your lives. Personally, I know in the breakout room we barely had time to get through all our participants. I wish we had had more time. But what we wanted to do now is to give all of you an opportunity to, maybe raise a hand, which you can do. If you click on at the bottom of the screen, there's a participants button. And then, well, I'm actually not sure if the raise hand function is here. If someone else sees that, that would be great to just write in the chat. But we want to hear from you regardless. So if you wanted to write in the chat, or even just to unmute yourself, say your name and to, oh, I actually do see hands raised. So I think that might just be a problem on my end. So let's go with that a little more orderly way than unmuting. Why don't you raise your hand, and then I will call on some of you to give an amplification to the room, because I think that the more people who can hear about this person in your lives and the contribution that they've provided, I think that's the ball game of really making that amplification reach out even further and reverberate through this almost 200 person audience. So I see that we have a raised hand from Maria. Riba, could we have you unmute and give us your amplification?
Yes, I'm Maria Ribot, and I'm from Barcelona. And my amplification is from my classmate. His name is Victor. And as I'm studying, I have to do a lot of group projects, and especially during COVID-19, it's a bit harsh to do it online and not see each other all the time. So he's just such a great team worker, and just like he always makes sure that you're confident in what you're doing, and when he feels like it's something you do is good, then he just says it, and he says like that's her idea or that's my idea, or like and it's just very nice to work with him. And I feel like I've taken so much from working with him over the years now, and that's what I wanted to say, like in a student's perspective of amplification, I guess.
Thank you so much, Maria. And I'll be the first to admit that I actually missed the name at the front of your contribution. So I'd love to hear that again.
My name, or like his name? Victor.
His name, the name of the person you're amplifying.
Yeah, Victor.
Victor, thank you. I just didn't want to let that opportunity go by, because I realized halfway through I missed the name. And that's the whole point of amplification, is, hearing the person's name and hearing what they contributed. And so I'm glad that I heard about Victor and kind of his ability to help, lift up. I think you were saying that, he'll be very open about saying that's their idea, they deserve credit for that, of, really providing credit during a time when a lot of people are doing extra work. I know you mentioned COVID-19, obviously, the kind of world that we're living in right now and the background to a lot of our conversations. And someone who's really stepping up during that time is, I think, someone worthy of amplification. So we also have a lot of hands today, and I'll admit that we may not get through all of you, but we want to give a lot of you an opportunity to speak. So I see a raised hand from Otilia. Could you please unmute and share with us today? Otilia Safran?
Otilia.
Not sure if there's an issue with being out here. I can potentially ask
Otilia, I was in your group and we talked about Gloria, your friend.
Okay. Now I realized I'm speaking alone. Sorry. So my name is Otilia. I am from Sibiu, Romania. My friend is Gloria. She's my co-worker, and now she's preparing to try to find a better job, higher position, and we are speaking much. Last week we have speak maybe 2 hours to organize how to help her, how to do this growing up job. I'm not interested about what she used to do. I'm interested, yes, but helping her, not take her place. So, and speaking long about how to organize, how she's now back to school, trying to get a master's degree, and I have to help her much.
Thank you. Appreciate that about Gloria, and I think that you made a really great point when you were describing them and their contribution, that you said, you said you didn't want to take credit for what they did. You want to explain what they did and what their ideas were. And I think that's something that my colleague Matthew talked about before, there's a difference between, regurgitation of someone's idea and amplification that we're showing here. And that difference is the name, what we've been talking about before. When you offer up an idea that came from someone else, but that you don't associate with a name, it's not going to give that person the credit that they deserve. And so by really, emphasizing the name like you did, that's the main difference that we're trying to show here, that when you give credit, when you give a name, that really leads to a better type of kind of community and others focused leadership skill that we're trying to show off here. I think we have time. I'm going to guess let's look at the time here. It's 10:56. Maybe we do 2 or 3 more people. I saw Rich had an early hand. So I would invite Rich to unmute and to speak to us.
Hello, Cameron. Lovely to meet you. I'm from London, here in the UK. My father was a Royal Marine in the British military, and he has taught me over many years, and he sadly died this year, but he taught me that community is a very important thing. And he taught me this quote, but he also taught me how to volunteer and be a manager of volunteers. But the quote is something really simple. He said, "The most important thing in life is community. It shapes us, it defines us, and it makes us who we are."
Wow, thank you, Rich. I'm going to go back and watch the recording and write that down, because I really appreciate your father's focus on community and how I think it really does, shape us, define us. I think that's what we have here when we have so many people, coming together to learn about ways to lift up others. That's community. When we have people hopefully taking these skills away from today and using it in their own lives to lift others, that's community too. And I'll also say that I'm not sure if you said your father's name, but I'd really love to hear who offered kind of this wisdom.
His name was Ian.
Ian, thank you. Thanks, Rich. Really appreciate that. We have a number of other people, and again, I'm sorry that there's so many hands, and I don't think we'll be able to get through all of them. But could I hear from Saleh today?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. My name is Saleh Nuruddin Bashar. I'm from Nigeria. I want to give a demonstration of my own amplification to one of my superior in the office, who told me how to getting to appreciate people all the time. For instance, there was a time we went to one of the mobile centers. He had an issue with his mobile SIM card, so he needed a swap. So when we went, there was a whole lot of queue, and we're in a hurry to meet up with other engagement. So at the end of the day, we were like, "Sir, do you think we can still hold on inside this queue?"
Sorry, Saleh, you're breaking up a little bit.
We're now like, okay, we'll go and plead with them so that they will enable you to go and do your SIM swap. So, hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Hi. I think you're coming back now. You were a bit fuzzy for a while there, but I think I can hear you now.
Okay, fine. So like I was telling you, there was a lot of queue. So we had to speak to those on the queue, and they allowed us that he should go and do his SIM swap. So we finished the SIM swap, we're going, we almost left the hall. He now drew our attention. He said, did you appreciate them for what they did to us? We said, no, he had to ask us to go back and appreciate them. So my boss, his name is Hamid. He always tells us that whenever you seek for assistance or any assistance be rendered to you, learn to appreciate the person that renders such assistance to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Saleh, for sharing about your boss Hamid and his kind of his outlook of universal appreciation, rather, even for kind of these small, or not small, but like these daily tasks of changing out a SIM card, a mobile SIM card. You're waiting in a long line and you appreciate what others do along the way. And I think that having that type of outlook can really just make the daily experience more satisfying. When you show greater appreciation, you think more about what others are doing. That, not to relate everything back to amplification, but that type of appreciation and seeing others' contributions, when you share those with the world, that's amplification. And so I appreciate how those are able to kind of fit together here. So I think, just judging the time, we probably have time for about one more. And I've seen Paola's hand for a while, and I wanted to give them the opportunity to speak.
Hi, my name is Paola. I'm from Venezuela, currently living in Mexico. The whole politics situation. I wanted to amplify Pastor Ricky Williams. He was my leader for a long time. And when I got the acceptance letter for this course, I was like, am I smart enough to actually be there? And I remember something he told us many times, and it was that we belong in every room we're in. Like, you belong there. If you're there, it's because you belong there and you're as smart and capable and worthy as anyone else in that room. So I wanted to amplify him. He passed away a few months ago. So that's really important for me, to amplify his life and to carry on his legacy.
Thanks, Paola. I'm sorry to hear about that, but I'm so gladdened to be able to learn about Pastor Ricky Williams and his, the takeaway that I had is, like what you said, you belong in every room that you're in. And I think that that's something, especially when we're, the goal that we're talking about here is to make people, have access to those new opportunities through, when we talked about the Obama White House, the idea was that there are rooms that you may not be in, and we want to get you to those rooms. And once you're there, we want you to contribute, because when you have a seat at the table, that means that you should be there. That seat, all but has your name on it. And if you are welcomed into that room, then so are your ideas. And so you should be willing and able to make them heard and to have others hear them. So I really appreciate that. And I think that unfortunately, that's probably going to be the end of our time. We still have a bit of the presentation to go. This has been genuinely wonderful. And I also don't want to ignore the fact that the chat has been really, strong, and people have been sharing their amplifications there as well. So if someone gets the opportunity to look through here later in the day, I think that there's a lot of good stories that I don't want to go unheard just because they were in the chat. So thank you, everyone. And I want to continue on with our presentation. And let's move forward. So thank you again.
I believe next up is our colleague Jess to start us on our final tool for the day, which is effective feedback.
Thank you so much, Cam, for that wonderful presentation, and to Jiyun for the introduction. So if we can go to the next slide, we are going to now speak more about effective feedback. So to sort of emulate what people have been doing and providing a definition for you all, feedback is used to describe the helpful information or criticism about prior action or behavior that can be used to adjust or improve future actions or behavior. Feedback is also a tool for continued learning that can align goals improve relationships, give people a sense of purpose, and create value when communicated effectively. Constructive feedback in an organization is incredibly important. Organizations need effective communication to succeed and thrive. In addition to increasing morale and transparency, feedback helps us learn more about ourselves, our strengths and weaknesses, our behaviors, and how our actions affect others. Feedback is also a process that requires constant attention. Employees and managers and leaders all over the world really dread this ritual, and lays the main problem, which is that we have institutionalized this feedback, and we should learn more about how to make it effective. So the way in which we do that is to know how to deliver feedback as well, which we can go back with and discuss later in the presentation. But your feedback should be clear, concise, and purposeful to be useful. And remember, feedback should be constructive, not destructive. An example of this, for example, that I wrote here: I would love to see you do more outreach in this area, or you did really well in this client presentation. Next time, it would be great to see more case studies. If we go on the next slide, we'll speak more about the benefits of feedback, which identified 5 here, but there are many more, of course. The first one is to identify areas of improvement. The second is that it promotes personal and professional growth. It motivates people to perform better. It improves confidence where you can correct performance and behavior. Now, this, of course, at the end of the day, also motivates people to change their behaviors both intrinsically and extrinsically. It helps us learn more about who we are, what things we can improve on, and it can also discuss suggestions on how to align your goals in the future. So now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Oliver, who will speak more about the feedback techniques.
Thanks, Jess. Today, we're going to focus on 3 important techniques that will help foster the collaborative atmosphere that you're aspiring to create. They are ask, tell, ask, sandwich, and bridge. Next slide, please. So the ask, tell, ask technique helps to give targeted, effective feedback. It encourages parties to self-identify strengths and weaknesses, which means that they have increased accountability for their actions. So this involves not just telling and saying, but asking questions. First, you ask. When you're looking to give feedback on a particular issue, start by asking for self-assessment on how your peer did on a particular task. Let's say you can ask, how did you feel about giving your first presentation? When you ask this, it achieves several things. First, you establish the other party's understanding of the issue. Second, you can gauge their emotional state. And third, you can build a rapport by demonstrating that you are not just here to nag, but actually listen to what the other party has to say. Tell. When you're telling, you explain in simple, straightforward language what you need to communicate. Tell them what behavior you observed and how it differed from what is expected. Avoid a long lecture that may seem pedantic. I think this is tough because the other party may not like what you have to say, but with this technique, you are showing empathy and conveying a message at the same time. For example, you can say, I thought at times you spoke too quickly for others to understand. Lastly, we have ask. End the feedback with another question on how improvements could be made. This confirms understanding on what was just discussed and opens up room for further progress. For example, you can say, how can you practice your public speaking so that everyone understands you clearly? When you ask this question, again, you're building that relationship, but because you're asking the other person for advice on how to improve. Next slide, please. The sandwich. The feedback sandwich is another tool that you can use to give feedback. You start by saying something positive, then tell them the meat of the matter. Then you end on another positive note on how improvements could be made. You can encourage the other party to make improvements by giving examples of when they were successful in making improvements in the past. You can say, hey, John, great job on your report. On the report, though, I noticed you didn't have a clear introduction. I think revising your introduction will make the report even better. So there you see that I, put the first positive feedback of letting John know that he did a great job. And then I also let him know that, I thought his introduction wasn't very clear. Then finally, I end on the positive note by suggesting that revising could make it even better. This technique helps soften the blow of what you're about to say, and it makes it easier to hear the difficult stuff while retaining a positive tone throughout the conversation. Next slide, please. Bridge. The last technique I want to talk about is bridging. Bridging involves connecting concepts from the past to the future. Focused on past positive performance, present observed performance, and then future expected performance. For example, you can say, "You are always so great with presentations. Last week, though, I saw that you spoke too fast sometimes. With some public speaking practice, I expect you to improve quickly and give even better presentations in the future." This is kind of similar to the sandwich mode because it softens the blow of constructive criticism. Because you're not putting too much focus on what the present issue is, but being positive and bringing up ways you can improve in the future. Next slide, please. Now, as some final tips, let's go over elements that are essential to effective feedback. First, be understanding and supportive. You want to improve performance, but not punish. By showing support for your peers, you can create an environment of trust and collaboration. Second, encourage self-assessment. As shown in the ask, tell, ask technique, self-assessment increases accountability. Your peer will feel less defensive when receiving feedback. Next slide, please. The next one, please. Third, don't make things personal. Minimize the tone of blaming and instead encourage cooperation. Always be considerate of other people's feelings. Fourth, always be considerate of other people's feelings. Fourth, explain slowly. Explaining concepts slowly not only makes things easier to understand, but makes constructive criticism less hurtful. For example, you can say, instead of saying, "You were really intimidating in the last meeting," you can say, "Did you sense at all that the client may have been at unease? Sometimes our industry terminology can be confusing. Maybe you can explain it in more detail what specific terms mean." By explaining things slowly, you soften the blow and build a rapport with the counterparty. Now, with these essential elements in mind, I want to turn it back to Professor Carter for some final thoughts.
Thank you, Oliver. And I want to take a moment to thank the entire team, as well as all of you, for, I think, an unprecedented level of support and participation in the chat today. So we hope that you're leaving this workshop today with an understanding of the importance of SHINE theory and thinking about self-awareness, amplification, and effective feedback. We find ourselves with some time here at the end of the presentation. And so I wanted to share a couple of personal examples and also then to talk about and hear your thoughts on amplification, what you took from this, maybe one thing that you might carry forward. So I want to tell two stories. The first is about an amplification that happened to me. I shared this story at the conclusion of our gender equity presentation, but I wanted to take everyone back to 2004. And I'm thinking here particularly of Paula's comment about, do I belong in the room? I was a very junior lawyer in my first ever job out of law school and surrounded by a room full of senior lawyers with substantially more experience. The senior lawyers asked all of us who were new to do a presentation on what we were working on. And when I finished my presentation, a woman called me out from the back of the room. She was a senior partner, and she spoke my name and she said, "Alex, has anyone ever told you that you are a fantastic presenter? You are great at the front of a room." And I remember in that moment almost looking around and thinking, is she really talking to me? And she said, "I want to make sure that we can put you in front of more people." And in front of everybody, she said, "I'm going to put you on the teaching committee at our company. I want to make sure that you're teaching our associates and maybe even going out to our clients." That was 16 years ago. And today, I'm here presenting to you at the United Nations, teaching the next generation of presenters and speaking on stages all over the world. And so, you know, Paula, just the way you'll never forget what your pastor said to you, I've never forgotten what that lawyer, Julie North, said to me, and it has a profound impact on the rest of people's lives. Do you know, from that moment, I resolved to be someone who did that for other people, who amplified them, who made their voices and their excellence larger, and help to build their self-confidence as well. And so I want to share a story with you from last fall, before coronavirus. I was speaking at a women's leadership conference, and I noticed a woman there, another speaker whose name was Minda Harts. And she is a Black woman who wrote a book especially for women of color. It's called The Memo: What Women of Color Need to Know to Claim Their Seat at the Table. And she was speaking that day about how hard it had been for her to get a book deal to be published because people kept telling her there's no market for your work. And I remember that day thinking, I'm going to amplify. I'm going to spend my entire year of 2020 amplifying Minda Harts and talking about her work. And so this entire year, I've been speaking about the memo to audiences, encouraging them to buy it, speaking Minda's name in every room that I was in. And yesterday, I returned from a family trip where I was caring for my mother to a bouquet of flowers that is sitting behind me. And that bouquet, to my surprise, was from Minda Harts. And she wrote a card to say, "Thank you for amplifying me and being my success partner this year." So I want you to know that from here forward, you are part of this community of amplifiers. I get the sense from the chat that many of you have already spent your lives working on how you can uplift the voices of others. And from here forward, we're all part of that community and doing it for each other together. And so before I turn it over to questions, I just want to amplify every member of the Columbia Law School team for an absolutely incredible presentation today. And I'm going to once again speak their names. Thank you, Jessica Barragan. Thank you, Ji-Yoon Chung. Thank you, Meyer Horn. Thank you, Youngjun Ju. Thank you, Oliver Kwan. Thank you, Cam Molis. Thank you, Mie Morikubo. Thank you, Matthew Robinson. And thank you, Erica Zoe. And with this, I'm going to turn it over and ask you please to raise your hands and tell us one thing you took from this workshop. And I think it would really help us all and focus us on what it is that we're going to be doing from here forward. For some reason, I know. Okay, all right, I see Sarah is first. Go ahead, Sarah.
I don't know if there was another Sarah, but I didn't raise my hand. So,
you didn't? Oh, it looks like you did. Okay.
Maybe it was from before, but I will say thank you to you, Alex, for this wonderful presentation, and to your entire team. It's been a lot of fun and educational. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sarah. I really appreciate that. Thank you for being here. Maria Paula Perdomo.
Hello, I didn't mean to raise my hand, but I will say what I took from it anyways. I think it remained lifted from when I tried to speak before. but I really did appreciate the comprehensiveness of the concept of amplification and how it's really about operativeness in the sense that it contributes to a better, differently focused and competition workplace, but it really empowers us all in a personal level. So it's not that we're working with a system made out of parts, but comprehensively it helps us overall. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria Paula. That's absolutely right. You know, shine theory, you know, the idea is that in helping others to shine, we all shine more brightly. And your comment really reminds us of that. Thank you. I think Carmen may have raised her hand. Carmen
Hello.
Capriles. Yes.
Yes, I do appreciate this workshop a lot. I think it's very important to start developing cultural intelligence and being and having a little bit more of empathy and really understanding people from other cultural backgrounds and other societies in order to amplify more their message. So I really believe that this workshop is useful in that way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carmen. We really appreciate that feedback and your being here today as well. Before I go to the next hand, I just want to pick up that somebody in the chat was saying, can we stay in touch? And yes, so my team and I have been talking during this presentation because there were so many outstanding amplification stories that we heard. And so we would like to give you an email for our mediation program in hopes that you would send some of those stories, those comments, those questions to us. We would love to, we're actually doing more research on amplification, and we would love to include your stories in what we're doing. So the email address is mediationleadership, all one word, @gmail. And Jiyun has just dropped it in the chat. Pelayo, perhaps we could send this out with the feedback and the PowerPoint as well. Mediationleadership @gmail. Please send us your takeaways, your stories, your quotes. It would be wonderful to have those from you and to stay in touch. All right, I'm going to go to Diane now. Diane Williams.
Thank you. Thank you for presenting a vision that's bigger than all of us. I see a potential to take the concept of amplification and the shine theory outward and apply it not only at the micro level, but also at the macro and meso levels, internationally, intra and inter, cross-cultural, across borders. So I thank you for that, putting that vision out there.
Thank you so much, Diane. This is a vision, right? And I think together we're going to build on this community and work toward making that vision a reality. I'm going to go now to Ibn Umar.
Great. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Ibn Umar from Ghana, Africa. Developing country, the content is great. Without this, I don't know how some of us will be exposed to this content and the exposure. In fact, what I've learned today is remarkable, and I'm gonna take it very far indeed. I feel that if I don't give out, then I'm not being good to the world. I've learned a lot today, and my kudos and thanks. I'm overwhelmed. Thank you, Alice, and your team, and grateful to all for this great presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're grateful to you and to UNITAR for providing this opportunity for us to connect across the world. And I'm overwhelmed by the feedback in the chat. A number of you have asked for ways to stay in touch. I wonder if we could go to the slide on that as well before I pick up on some additional comments. Let me go to Dawn DaCosta, who participated a couple of times, and I see you with your hand up in the chat, Dawn.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, I found this presentation extremely helpful. I think the team, Alex, you put together a fantastic team. It was clear and concise. And I was so grateful to be part of a chat of amazing women with stories. And I think what came out of this is, for me, I'm experiencing a pivot and I'm looking for a career change. And this is just solidifying that I'm headed in the right direction. Your story, Alex, about an amplified voice and you hearing from Julie North to raise you up, and then you paying it forward to Minda, and just, I saw the passion and I saw you getting choked up, and this is what it's about, hearing each other and raising each other up. So these classes, and I took your last class as well, are just solidifying that I am on the right path to pivot, and I am going to keep in touch with the group, and I look forward to hearing what other great things that you all are putting together. So
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you so much for your partnership and your investment in this training series. I remember you from the previous presentation, and you're right, I was getting choked up. I normally make a rule that I'm not supposed to cry when I'm teaching class. But truly, when I think about what we do at the heart of the mediation clinic, it's about empowerment and amplification. When we mediate with parties, we are thinking about how to amplify their contributions, to give them a larger sense of their place in the world, the things that they're good at, to help them see themselves more wholly and more compassionately than ever before. Because I believe when people can see themselves that way, they can see other people that way too. And so it really helps to resolve conflict. And then the work you're seeing today from the front of the room by my team, it's a team of experienced mediators who are using their skills to create the same kind of environment in a large virtual classroom that they do for people in mediation, paying those amplification skills forward, and in the process, empowering themselves to take on this role as facilitators. And so I want to once again thank them and thank all of you for giving them and giving us this opportunity. So I think we have just a couple minutes left. And so I'm going to pick here. We have so many people. Chanel, I think, had wanted to raise her hand and said she was unable.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for this wonderful presentation. What really resonated with me as an educator, I've been an educator for about 13 years in urban schools, and I've come to realize that my students, they do have a voice, and I should be a huge facilitator of raising and amplifying their voice, especially in this current situation that we're in. A lot of my students are marginalized and oppressed, and as teachers, we kind of become complacent, especially if we're in an urban center for so long. We kind of tend to be complacent with the lack of resources and the lack of help from administration, and we end up unconsciously kind of practicing or becoming a vehicle of oppression and marginalization. So I think that moving forward, I need to be more cognizant of my student situation, their background, and give them a voice to be heard and amplify them and help them to shine.
Thank you so much for that, Chanel, and for that perspective as an educator yourself. I completely agree. I think, just to be honest, a lot of the students who come to the mediation clinic may be from traditionally underrepresented groups. And for sure, the people that we are serving in the clinic have been marginalized by many institutions in their lives. I recall one of the first times I mediated with somebody and they expected me to disenfranchise them like a judge. They expected me to look at them and belittle them or put them down or tell them, you don't have any power here. And when I asked them, what would you like to do? This is your process. What do you see for your future? What could we help you achieve? The first time there was a stunned silence, and I've seen it many times since then. People can't believe that we are recognizing their power, helping them to see that they have power rather than trying to take that away. And Chanel, you're right that it is critically important as instructors that we do that for our students. I want to share a personal note to end this workshop. We started this partnership between UNITAR and Columbia Law School back in 2016. And at that time, I want you to know that the way we ran these was that the students would do the research, and then I and my partner, Professor Sean Watts, would do all of the teaching. And as we've gone on in this partnership, we've changed that so that the students, yes, continue to do the research, but they are now also doing the teaching. And this is not because the students got better. This is because I became better as a professor. And I truly believe that the final step toward learning and leadership is to be able to pass your power on and teach other people to sit in your chair. And so I want to thank you again here today for this incredibly powerful workshop. I feel that we've started something here today that's going to continue into the future. And so I want to turn it back over to Pelayo and UNITAR to talk a bit about the spring, but just know this will not be the last time you will hear from us on this topic. We wish you a very blessed end of your year. We wish everyone good health and prosperity, and we look forward to seeing you in 2021. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Pelayo to close us out here today.
Thank you so much, Alex. I am so glad to see how everything has grown so much, and we have been able to this year, even though like we had so many complications in the world, we really took the positive side and we focused on that to keep growing and to keep evolving. And we could have said we won't do anything and we'll wait until the world comes back to normal, but that's not what leaders do. And we are so glad that you, who were the one actually, Alex, that brought up to us the idea of, okay, let's do it in a webinar, let's do it in a way that we can still connect with people. And I am so happy that we followed that advice and actually jumped into the idea. And if the world continues this way, we'll be joining in spring in the same format. We'll be also doing Zoom seminars. Our series are structured in fall and spring, having 3 courses per season. And you can also request a certificate of attendance for the 3 seasons. So I will leave our email below in the chat. And also, please know that our website will have an article of each of the workshops that we have done that includes the presentation and the recording for anybody who has missed it, if you want to share with somebody and just spread the word about these workshops. And with that, I would just like to thank everyone for a wonderful year full of learning experiences and for your participation. It's overwhelming to see how fast the chat moves, how many nationalities we have been involved with. And once again, as an amplifier, I would like to thank Alex and their team for bringing this forward. I hope everybody has a wonderful day and we'll look forward to staying in touch with all of you. Bye-bye.
Sorry, I've just got a quick question. How do we get the certificate here to make sure that we're here? Do we just email the NYO at UNITAR?
Yes, please.
Thank you so much. God bless you. You guys were
Thank you,
absolutely
Rich.
incredible.
Thank you for sharing
Rich.
your
We really appreciate
quote.
it. Stay in
Thank
touch.
you so
Send
much.
us your story, please.
I
Your
will.
quote from your dad.
I will be writing up now and sending it over today.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kunal. Thank you. Thank you. Please send us your comments.
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry I couldn't get to you today.
Understood. But the seminar was interesting and I learned a lot.
Wonderful. I'm so glad. It's been an honor to be with you these 3 times, and we look forward to seeing you in the spring, the winter.
Please kindly share the email so we could forward our email address for the certificate.
Will do. I'll leave it in the chat.
Hello, thanks so very
NYO, like
much.
New York office at unitar.org. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks so very much. It was wonderful, really wonderful. Very grateful.
Thank you, Samuel. We're grateful you were here. Please stay in touch.
Thanks so very much. I'm from Cameroon, northern Cameroon, Marwa, the conflict-frequent part of Cameroon, the far north. Thanks so very much.
Wonderful. I have a student in Cameroon right now. Pelayo, was Marco here today, or I didn't see him?
I didn't see him. I think he may
Yeah.
have popped up, but I didn't see him.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tom, El Shaddai, Saleh, Viviel, thank you.